Nigeria has slammed the move by 3 junta-led countries to quit ECOWAS. Now, Abuja currently chairs the bloc and says the unelected military leaders of Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso are letting their people down with their joint decision to leave. There are concerns that their exit will deal a blow to the bloc's regional integration efforts after it suspended the countries following the coups. A statement from Nigeria's foreign ministry says that those seeking to leave ECOWAS were not acting in good faith. However, it says they are still willing to engage with the 3 countries. All right, joining me for this conversation and the implications, therefore, is a senior advisor at International Crisis Group, Liesl Louw-Vaudran. Liesl, good morning to you and thank you for your time. Let's begin with that very question of the implications of this if these countries leave. In fact, the understanding is that they've declared themselves as having gone with immediate effect. It would seem that the negotiations thereafter will be an attempt to try and bring them back within the group.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me. It is a very important development actually in West Africa, and I think it has implications for the African Union itself and our institutional architecture. South Africa is an important member of the African Union as well, so broader questions. But for the moment, citizens of these 3 countries are asking a lot of questions about what this really means, because as you said, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they all had coups these last couple of years. The last one was in July last year in Niger, and they last year created what they call the Alliance of Sahel States. And then this weekend on Sunday they declared that they're breaking away from ECOWAS. ECOWAS has sanctioned these countries because they now have, military leaders.
Yeah.
So for the citizens, they have ECOWAS passports. They travel on ECOWAS passports, which we here in SADC actually don't have. But now they're asking the question, what does this now mean for us? Does it mean we're going to need a visa to go over the border between Niger and Nigeria, for example, which would be a huge change for them? It has huge impacts on trade, etc. So there really are many questions, for the African Union, for institutions, but also for citizens, really.
Yeah. Key concerns, it would seem, Liesl, center around security. These are countries, we understand, are vulnerable to militant groups. How secure are they if they are outside of this ECOWAS arrangement?
Yes, you're right. They have really suffered severely, all these countries, from terror groups, jihadist groups, since 2012, 2013. And actually in the statements when they, withdrawing from ECOWAS, they said, well, ECOWAS hasn't helped us. These other countries haven't helped us. So, we're still suffering insecurity, these threats, and they think that they can, by joining forces, actually combat insecurity and jihadism themselves. They also accuse ECOWAS of being manipulated by outside forces. There's this accusation that France, the new colonial power, is also behind the sanctions against them. So there are a lot of other issues. But on a practical level, it is true that this devastating insecurity in the whole of the Sahel region, has continued unabated. We had UN troops in Mali, for example, that are now withdrawing. There was a huge French presence of like 4,000 troops, Operation Barkhane, that tried to fight the jihadists. But this has been ongoing, and there's actually no sign that breaking away from ECOWAS also. And turning, for example, Mali has turned to Russia. There are Wagner mercenaries have actually helped fight this jihadist threat. What will really, we know in the long run we need stronger states with better presence. It's very complex, but now they've broken away from ECOWAS. They are looking, as I say, to Russia and other options. There's a lot of Russian military support, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But in the short run, they're really cutting off the trade and development options, which, as I said, ECOWAS is one of our strongest regional economic communities, does promote regional trade, regional integration, and these are small countries, huge countries in surface, but Sahelian, very much dry, the Sahara. The development options are limited, although they do have gold and certain minerals. So we, as Crisis Group, we've been trying to, since last year, we have a big team in Dakar and others looking at the Sahel and the security threats.
Yeah.
And this is actually going to maybe put these states backwards when it comes to solutions.
You mentioned Russia's involvement, which appears to be the number one choice. I don't know whether I'm putting it correctly. You'll correct me here. It seems to be a favored choice, if you like, for these countries. Just yesterday, a story came out suggesting that Niger and Russia are forming military ties. However, when you speak of Russia, there is the mention of the Wagner group. Now, the understanding here is that this is a mercenary group. How does this group play into the military architecture of Russia? Is it a legitimate structure of the Russian military, or are they mercenaries in the true sense of the word?
Yes, I mean, that is a good question. When Wagner started to deploy initially in Mali, specifically in the Central African Republic, in 2019, we also saw Wagner actually in northern Mozambique for a short while, and they were very unsuccessful there. They presented themselves as a private military group, so mercenaries basically, and not directly linked to Russia. And then we had the upheaval, as you know, Prigozhin, their leader, who was shot. They moved closer to, Russia. Initially Mali, for example, wanted to say, no, these are separate. They received military help from Russia itself. But on the ground, Wagner is deployed. Now no one is making, it's a secret to no one that Wagner is in various countries in Africa, specifically, as I said, in Mali in a big way. In a way, it's a populist move also for these governments, like Niger, as you say, traveling to Russia, announcing all this military aid. People have been protesting in the streets against France specifically, and there was a lot of French aid, EU aid to Niger. Niger was sort of the last pro-Western country until July last year. So when the military leaders came in, you saw pro-Russian flags. It's almost a reaction to, as I say, this issue of we don't want to be manipulated by the West. How this plays out and what Russia's capacity is to really concretely assist these countries, it's quite limited, as we've seen. Yeah.
And Russia's interests here, what could those be?
Yeah, huge interests, geopolitical interests. Of course, everybody now wants to have Africa's, on their side, especially, after the Ukraine war. We saw Africa divided when it came to, for example, supporting the Ukraine and the Europeans in the UN General Assembly, but also economic. These countries have mineral wealth, as I said. So Russia and obviously other countries have got economic interests in the Sahel, in West Africa, other parts of the continent as well. It's becoming increasingly important. Fortunately, we do see many countries wanting to take a neutral stance, let's say, and not take sides in this new, geopolitical struggle for Africa.
Final question to you, Liesl. If indeed these countries are gone, when I say gone, they're gone at least for now. They're not part of this ECOWAS structure, the regional structure. How vulnerable does that make the countries, the neighboring countries to them? And I'm sure Nigeria, as it chairs this structure, it worries about security a lot because it is among the countries in West Africa that has been a target of these militant groups. How vulnerable does that make the countries that still form part of the ECOWAS?
Yes, that's a very good question. They are also quite divided. There are countries like Togo who feels ECOWAS shouldn't sanction these countries and continue with dialogue, while others take a more sort of a strong stance, specifically Nigeria, against the military, saying, we should not accept unconstitutional change of government. We are democracies and we should continue sanctioning them until they hold elections. But in terms of security, where you're right, Nigeria, for example, has got agreements around the Lake Chad Basin against Boko Haram. So Niger is part of the multinational joint task force against Boko Haram. And the question is being asked, what about Niger? Are they now going to not be part of it anymore? They're a key country. If you look at a map, Niger is right there around. You have Chad, Nigeria, and Niger, and then Cameroon. They all come together, and that's where the Boko Haram threat is. And we've seen in the last couple of years the coastal countries like Benin and Togo, for example, Ghana, also, not too much, seeing like these jihadist threats moving towards the coast. So cooperation is extremely important between the other ECOWAS members and then the Sahel countries where these jihadist groups have taken root. So hopefully there will be continued dialogue, and I'm sure that, for example, the African Union, they're having a big summit now in the next 2 weeks, almost, just over 2 weeks, in Addis Ababa, and as I said, where South Africa also plays a big role. African countries are going to have to come up with some solutions on how to continue working with very important countries in the Central Sahel that, are part of the African continental structures, and we need to continue having a dialogue with them. It's extremely important.
Liesl Louw-Vaudran, thank you very much for your time and the analysis of this situation. She is a senior advisor at International Crisis Group.